Hello, welcome to Excellence. In our recap program, we are discussing monthly current affairs videos. In today's session, let us discuss December 2020 related current issues. This is part 1 of the video. PDF of this particular session is available in the description mentioned below. And if you want to write test series based on the videos, based on monthly videos, you can join so by clicking on the link mentioned in the description. First, let us discuss polity related current affairs. Our first issue is RTI versus right to privacy. RTI, right to information. It is declared as fundamental right under Article 19. Right to privacy is declared as fundamental right under Article 21 in Puttaswamy case. Now the issue is Supreme Court has declared that RTI is not against right to privacy. Similarly, right to privacy is not against RTI. Both are complementary. Conceptually, RTI and right to privacy are complementary and they also come in conflict with each other, but they have their respective restrictions. Right to privacy is not an absolute right. Right to information is not an absolute right. They have their own limitations. In this context, the Supreme Court has declared that both complement each other. They are not against each other. With regard to RTI, if any citizen of India requests the information from the public authority, including Chief Justice of India of Supreme Court, the relevant authority must reply within 30 days. If not, we can go to CIC in case of central institutions, SIC in case of state institutions. With regard to right to privacy, in case Puttaswamy case, it is said that right to privacy is a natural right and it has certain limitations too. What are the limitations? Government can restrict the right to privacy under 3 conditions. 1. The state must have legislative mandate. 2. The cause should be legitimate state purpose. 3. The state action should be proportionate. These 3 conditions are considered reasonable restrictions on right to privacy. In Puttaswamy case, these are the 3 things that are declared. 1. Right to privacy is part of fundamental right Article 21. Right to privacy is natural and inherent right. Sexual orientation is part of individual's privacy. These are the 3 important points under case Puttaswamy case. Finally, right to privacy and RTI both are not against each other. They both complement each other. Next issue is nota. Is it a right to reject? An advocate has moved to Supreme Court asking, if the nota votes in a constituency are more, fresh elections need to be conducted and the candidates who have contested earlier and who have lost to nota should not be allowed to contest in the fresh polls of that time. That was his request. But Supreme Court, this particular issue is still pending in Supreme Court. Now let us understand what is this nota. Nota means none of the above option. This none of the above option for Lok Sabha and for Assembly elections was introduced in 2013 under Supreme Court's guidelines, and it was introduced for Rajya Sabha elections in 2014. In PUCL versus Union of India case, Supreme Court has declared that right to vote also includes right to not to vote and right to remain neutral. In this context, it has asked the government to introduce nota option, which is a right to reject. Rule 49 of Conduct of Election Rules says that presiding officer can record the name of the person by placing the ink on the finger of the person who doesn't want to vote for anyone. Their names will be included in the Form 17A. Their right to secrecy is gone now, yes or no? If their names are included in the non-voted persons list, yes or no? If they go to poll booth and if they don't vote, their names will be registered. This is against right to secrecy, and right to secrecy is part of right to vote. In this context, the Supreme Court has said that right to vote includes right not to vote. Right to secrecy is part of right to free and fair election. Nota option should be there in all direct elections. That was the judgment given in PUCL versus Union of India case. In this particular case, nota was introduced. As of now, please remember, nota is not right to reject. That means even if the total number of votes to nota is more, these won't be considered. Out of the contested candidates, the majority votes person will be considered for the post in that particular position. Nota votes won't be considered. Whatever the number of votes may be, that doesn't have any impact on the poll outcome. That is the present situation. That's why this case was filed in the Supreme Court. Next issue is amendment to 7th schedule. Recently, Confederation of Indian Industry has sought the inclusion of tourism in the concurrent list so that both center and state can regulate the sector and frame the policies for the growth. 7th schedule, what it includes? 7th schedule divides the areas in subjects into 3 areas: center list, state list and concurrent list. 7th schedule comes under Article 276 of Indian Constitution. In the central list only Parliament can make the laws. In the state list only state legislature can make the laws. Under exceptional circumstances Parliament can make the laws. In the concurrent list both Parliament and state legislatures can make the laws simultaneously. 7th schedule can be amended only by the special majority of both the houses plus consent of half of the state legislatures. They have to provide the consent to that particular law with the simple majority. There are other areas which follow the same procedure. What are they? Election. If the Parliament want to amend the constitutional provisions such as election to President and its manner, extent of executive power of Union and states, Supreme Court and High Court, dilution of legislative powers between Union and states, any of the lists given in the 7th schedule, representation of states in the Parliament, power of Parliament to amend the Constitution. In all these areas, if the Parliament wants to amend these provisions, it has to amend using this particular one: special majority of both the houses and consent of the state legislatures with simple majority. Next issue is NRIs and electronic postal voting system. Election Commission of India has approached Law Ministry to permit NRIs to cast their vote through electronic postal ballot system. What is this electronic postal ballot system and why NRIs are given the voting right? NRIs, non-resident Indians, these are Indian citizens who are residing in other countries temporarily for either education or job. And voting rights for NRIs were introduced in 2011 by amending Representation of People's Act. NRI vote in a constituency. NRI can vote in the constituency in which her place of residence is mentioned in the passport. This person can vote when they have the original passport with them. What is the procedure? According to Election Commission's proposal to Law Ministry, NRI who wants to vote, first they inform the returning officer before 5 days of the election. After the notification of the election, the person need to inform the returning officer. On receiving this information, RO will dispatch ballot paper electronically. This NRI voter has to download that ballot paper, mark their preference on the printout, send it back along the declaration attested by the officer appointed by the diplomatic consulate. This one is known as electronic postal ballot system. As they are voting after the notification of the election, they have time to do the entire procedure. This is the procedure mentioned by the Election Commission. This is the proposal only. As of now, this has not been implemented. Next issue is inner line permit. What is this inner line permit? ILP. Inner line permit system was introduced in Manipur last year, that is in 2020. And while discussing about the developmental projects in Manipur, government has said that ILP helps Manipur in maintaining its own cultural and other identity. What is this ILP? Under Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act 1873, ILP is an official travel document that allows the inward travel of an Indian citizen to the restricted or protected area for a limited period. This special permit is necessary for all the outsiders. If the person is foreigner, that person has to take protected area permit to visit the tourist places inside the ILPs. We declared ILP for Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur and Mizoram. These are the areas for which this ILP works. Next issue is electoral bond scheme. Supreme Court has mentioned that electoral bond scheme and its implementation is not against any of the transparent rules. That was the judgment. Now, what are these electoral bonds? Why there was a criticism? Electoral bond is simply a monetary instrument, financial instrument to donate funds to the political parties. Funds can be donated to the political parties through cash, through check, or through direct transfer, or through electoral bonds. These bonds are issued by the bank, in India's case SBI, in multiples of thousands, 10,000s, 1 lakh, 10 lakh and 1 crore. Earlier there was a limit on the corporate funding, corporate political funding. Now there is no limit. They can purchase any of these bonds in any numbers and they can give it to the political parties, and these political parties, they have to submit them in the bank, withdraw the money or get the money into their bank account within 15 days of the authorization of these particular bonds. On these bonds, no interest will be provided. These bonds can be purchased by a person, citizen of India, or company incorporated in India or established in India. That means even foreign companies which have subsidiary in India, they can also invest in this. Any person can buy the bonds, submit with singly or jointly with other individuals. Donor's name won't be mentioned on the bond. Please understand, donor's name won't be mentioned on the bond. And these bonds can be purchased by the registered purchased by anyone, and these can be encashed only by the registered political parties with Election Commission of India. But earlier there was a limit, now there is no limit, and the donor's name is not there. If you go and ask the political party who has given you this much money, they won't tell us the names because they don't write down the names because it is not mandatory, and on the electoral bond name is not mentioned. In this context, it was said that it breeds in, it lacks transparency, but government says this bond is purchased by the individual or company through a bank account. So bank will have the information, but will the bank give us the information who has purchased of what amount? No. And they said RTI is also not applicable for this. Only investigative authorities can access this. So will this be against the right to information and right to transparency? That is the issue. That's why there was complaint with regard to this. Next, let us understand geography related concepts. First issue is Meghalaya and rat hole mining. Meghalaya coal mining, majorly rat hole mining. So where this coal mining is prevalent and why this is banned by NGT, let us understand. In geography, we need to understand the geographical significance of this particular area. Meghalaya Plateau is part of Peninsular Plateau. This is east of Rajmahal Hills and from Meghalaya to Shillong Plateau, Meghalaya and Shillong Plateau. Garo Rajmahal Gap, which is also known as Malda Gap. This is known as down faulting. This Malda Gap is formed and this is filled by the sediments of Ganga and Brahmaputra rivers. In this particular region, coal is predominant. But as Meghalaya is predominantly hilly region, Garo, Khasi, Jaintia Hills, hilly region, rat hole mining is prevalent over here. Under rat hole mining, there are many dangers of leakage of gases, fires, water saturation. Likewise, there are many threats. Earlier, there were many accidents which has led to death of miners also, coal miners. That is why NGT has banned the rat hole mining in Meghalaya in the year 2014 itself. But still the coal mining, illegal rat hole mining is prevalent. In this context, this needs to be prevented. Now let's understand a bit more on Meghalaya Plateau. Meghalaya Plateau slopes down to Brahmaputra Valley in the north and Surma and Meghna valleys in the south. Its western boundary is more or less the Bangladesh boundary, and western, central and eastern parts of Plateau are known as Garo Hills, Khasi, Jaintia Hills and Mikir Hills. Shillong is the highest point of the plateau. It is one of the important tourist places as it is a hilly station. Next issue is height of Mount Everest. Nepal and China both have announced that they have revised the height of Mount Everest to 8,848.86 meters. This new height is equivalent to 29,032 feet. Old height is 29,208 feet. Mount Everest is the highest peak in the world. First survey of Everest was carried out in the year 1847, led by a team, Andrew Berg, Surveyor General of India at that time. It was called as Peak 15 at the time. Kanchenjunga, Mount Kanchenjunga was considered the highest peak at the time. But later, Mount K2 is the second highest peak. Mount Everest is the first highest peak. Kanchenjunga is the third highest peak in the world. Everest lies on the border between Nepal and Tibet. That way, it can be accessed from both the sides. Mount Everest, this is part of Himadri. There are three parallel mountains in Himalayas: Himadri, Himachal and Shivalik. Mount Everest is part of Himadri mountains. Shivaliks are discontinuous mountains. Himadri and Himachal mountains are continuous mountain chains. Next issue is El Nino. According to the recent study of Indian Institute of Science and the Center for Atmospheric Oceanic Sciences, El Nino was not the only cause for drought in India. There are other climatic conditions such as Indian Ocean Dipole, Madden-Julian Oscillation, Indian Ocean Dipole, and other reasons are also there for drought in India. It's not just El Nino. What is El Nino? Let us try to understand. In the normal circumstances, this is our South America, this is Australia. Along the South American coast, Peru current or Humboldt current, strong Peru and Humboldt current flows. It is a cold water current or cold current. Because of this heavy cold current, here on the opposite side, warm water shifts to this particular side. So low pressure zone forms here, high pressure zone forms over here. But due to various conditions, strong counter current happens in the Pacific region because of weak Humboldt current. This leads to low pressure over here, comparatively high pressure over here. This reverses the situation. When low pressure is there, here heavy rainfall occurs, here drought-like conditions occur. But when the situation gets reversed, here rainfall occurs and here drought-like conditions occurs. This climatic phenomena also impacts Indian monsoon. This leads to drought-like condition in India. This reversal of wind and comparatively weaker Peru or Humboldt current is known as El Nino condition. El Nino is a recurring climate event that abnormally warms the equatorial Pacific water and pulls the clouds away from the Indian subcontinent. This leads to overall drought-like conditions between June and September. That means it impacts the monsoon. Next issue is Shola grasslands and invasive species. Recently, it is reported that Shola grasslands are fast disappearing. One of the reasons is invasive species in that particular region. First of all, let us understand what are Shola grasslands. Shola grassland or Shola vegetation are type of tropical mountain forests specifically found in Western Ghats, and they have the characteristic feature of rolling grasslands in high altitudes. Shola grasslands, they consist of dwarf trees growing, see for example here, trees, and then this is all grassland. Again trees, grassland, like that. The vegetation is double layered story with closed canopy. Shola forests are found in Palani Hills, Nilgiri Hills, Mukurthi National Park, Ervikulam National Park. These are famous for Shola forest. Between 1973 to 2014, Shola grassland area has reduced to 67%. It has seen 66% decline. See, these are the areas: Nilgiri Hills, Annamalai Hills, Palani Hills, Agastyamalai Hills. These are the areas with Shola forest. Shola forests are associated with grasslands. They store large quantities of water. That is why they are important. And they serve as water harvesting and storage structures. Many of the rivers in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, they originate from these Shola grasslands. And these are perennial. But with the depletion of sholas and other forests in the region, these streams they are drying up, especially during the summer season. That's why sholas they impact the disappearance of sholas, they impact the biodiversity, they impact the water condition in that particular region. Next issue is Bashanchar Island. Bashanchar Island is also known as Tenganchar Island. This is located in the Bay of Bengal region. This belongs to Bangladesh. This is one of the newly formed islands because of the Himalayan silt in 2006, and it is a 40 square kilometer area. From Myanmar, especially from this Rakhine province, Rohingya Muslims, these are refugees. They have come to this particular place known as Cox's Bazar. So there are refugee camps in Cox's Bazar, but that is overcrowded. In this context, Bangladesh government wants to reduce the stress in this particular area. That's why it is relocating the refugees to Tenganchar region, which is also known as Bashanchar region. But this is prone to cyclones that is formed over Bay of Bengal region, and it is prone to erosion. That is why UN Refugee Agency has said that it is logistically challenging to relocate people in this particular area. But Bangladesh says that refugees will be staying only for a temporary period. Temporary houses etc. will be built in this area. As we have high land pressure, this is the only thing that we can do. That is the stand of Bangladesh. Bashanchar Island important. Next issue is Sentinelese Island and Sentinel Island. Anthropological Survey of India, it has studied the policy documented that Sentinel group of tribes now have become the endangered group from the commercial activity in the nearby regions. This policy document has came to light after 2 years of killing American national John Allen Shaw. He went near to this particular island, Sentinelese tribe. They killed him. These Sentinelists, these are most secluded communities in the world. These are declared as PVTGs. According to 2011 census, only 80 to 150 people are remaining from this community. These tribes, they are Negrito tribes. And entire North Sentinelese Island, along with 5 kilometers coastal sea from the high water mark, is declared as tribal reserve. That means without permission, no one can enter into that particular region. Government does the patrolling everything, but it doesn't directly interfere with their culture. It doesn't send anyone to that particular region. Many anthropologists try to reach the people and communicate with the people, but finally they are the most secluded one. That's why not much interaction has happened. This North Sentinelese Island is near to Little Andaman. Between Little Andaman and Great Andaman, we have a water passage known as Duncan Passage. This North Sentinelese Island is near to this Duncan Passage. Next issue is Garland Highway. Zaran's Dalram Road, constructed by India in 2009, it can give access to Afghanistan's Garland Highway. That is the issue here. From here to here, we have a port known as Chabahar Port, which is located in Gulf of Oman region. Chabahar Port is located in Gulf of Oman region, that is nearby this Gwadar Port. Gwadar Port is part of China-Pakistan's CPEC corridor. It is the end point in CPEC corridor. Chabahar is nearby this, and here we have Strait of Hormuz. So it is near to Strait of Hormuz also. So from Chabahar Port, Zaran's is the border town of Iran. From here to here, Dalram is a place in Afghanistan. India has constructed a road. And in Afghanistan, they have a highway known as Garland Highway, which connects the important cities from north to south. Herat, Dalram, Kandahar, Kabul, Mazar-e-Sharif. These cities are connected through a road network called as Garland Road. This Zaran-Dalram Road helps us in reaching the entire region through Garland Road. Once the Chabahar to Zaran's railway line gets completed, access will be easy. But now, see, this belongs to December 2020 issue. But now if we look at the situation in Afghanistan, this is nowhere near to the reality now. Next, let us understand international relations related current affairs. Our first issue is WHO, World Health Organization. Please understand, all these issues can be understood from two dimensions, prelims and mains point of view. But we are dealing current affairs only for prelims. That is why we are discussing prelims related aspects and we are not covering mains related aspects. For example, with regard to WHO, it can be discussed in detail with regard to mains. But for our prelims purpose, we need to know very few points. First of all, it is a specialized body under UN, established in the year 1948. It has Directorate General and it has Executive Board. This is the board which takes the decision. For the Executive Board, members are selected from 5 regions: Africa, America, Southeast Asia, Europe, Eastern Mediterranean, and Western Pacific. And it defines health as state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not just absence of disease or infirmity. In this context, problems in working of WHO and solutions impacts, these come under mains discussion. Please go through it once. And one important point to remember is this is an advisory body. This cannot force the countries to implement the resolutions and decisions taken by it. And the power to gather the information is limited and it has no complete source of funding. Voluntary contributions form major part of the funding of WHO. These are some of the issues which needs to be addressed. Next issue is Iran's nuclear deal and IAEA. What is Iran's nuclear deal? This is formally known as Joint Comprehensive Action Plan. This was signed in the year 2015. But when USA's president Trump came into power, former president, USA has withdrawn from it. And again after last year's elections, Joe Biden, USA's president, has said that USA will rejoin this particular Iran's nuclear deal. Now, what is this deal? What is this Iran nuclear deal? USA and others complain that Iran is planning to develop nuclear weapons, which is against the NPT in which it has signed. Now, this can lead to regional instability. Others also will compete. That leads to nuclearization of the region. That is why these countries, they try to impose these sanctions on Iran. Iran's economy got affected heavily. That's why Iran and P5+1. P5 means permanent 5 countries of United Nations Security Council. That is P5, USA, China, UK, Russia, France plus Germany. P5 plus Germany, they have made an agreement with Iran saying that we will remove the sanctions on you. You have to reduce the uranium enrichment. You have to dismantle your reprocessing centers. You have to maintain the transparency. And IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, is going to be the nodal agency which inspects your nuclear power plants. Iran said okay. But then they said we will remove these sanctions over a period of time. They started removing this particular one. From 2015 onwards, Iran started opening up its nuclear power plants to IAEA inspections. It was inspecting it. And then when Trump came in 2018, he said, we are going to move out of it. Then European countries known as E3, France, Germany and UK, they promised the relief for Iran because USA came out of this agreement and imposed the sanctions. So that's why these three, they have come to the rescue of Iran and it has said that we are going to use instrument in support of trade and exchanges, INSTEX. INSTEX is the measure which the E3 countries have used to support the Iran. Why? USA has imposed sanctions. That means banks cannot transact with Iran in dollars. But majorly international trade happens in dollars, yes or no? And major SWIFT, etc. These channels, they work through USA. To have a way through it, E3 countries have formed this particular mechanism. Now again, when Joe Biden elected as the president, he announced that USA is rejoining the JCPOA and they are going to renegotiate the deal. These renegotiations are still happening. Next issue is neighborhood first policy. India has neighborhood first policy. It has reiterated that since 2014, its neighborhood first policy did not change. So that's the stand given by India. Which are our neighbor countries? Maldives, Sri Lanka, eastern side, Bhutan, this is not Bhutan, this is Bhutan, Nepal, Myanmar, Bangladesh. These are our neighboring countries. We have Afghanistan, Pakistan. Even Afghanistan, Pakistan are part of our neighborhood first policy. Neighborhood first policy means in all the areas, including from economic cooperation to technical, educational, connectivity, space, environment, all the areas, India wants to proactively engage with the neighbors. And Act East policy is an extension to neighborhood first policy. First comes the immediate neighbors and then comes the East Asian countries. That's why Act East policy is an extension to this particular one. Neighborhood first policy was proposed in the year 2014. It is simply to give preference to neighboring countries in our foreign policy. Next issue is Saudi-Qatar conflict. In 2017, Saudi Arabia and its supporting countries including Egypt, Yemen, UAE, Bahrain, these countries, they all together imposed transport blockade against Qatar. Why? They said that it is supporting the radical Islamist groups. But the reason is it is having close economic relations. It is trying to maintain close economic relations with Iran. That was the reason. And then this Qatar went to International Civil Aviation Organization. This organization has said that it is illegal to blockade the air transport to Qatar. And these countries, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, these together, they went to ICJ, International Court of Justice. International Court of Justice has struck down their appeal and they have upheld the ICAO's, International Civil Aviation Organization's verdict, and it has asked these countries to remove this blockade. From then onwards, the conflict was happening between Saudi Arabia and this Qatar. Last year, that is in December 2020, they tried to normalize their relationship. There is a council known as Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC. It has 6 member countries: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE and Oman, 6 countries. So these are Persian Gulf countries. We have Iraq, Iran, which are also bordering the Persian Gulf, but they are not part of Gulf Cooperation Council. Gulf Cooperation Council. Yemen is not part of Gulf Cooperation Council. Next issue is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. OPEC is a permanent intergovernmental organization created at the Baghdad Conference in 1960. Its headquarters is in Austria, Vienna. This OPEC membership is open to anyone with substantial export of oil, crude oil, which shares the ideals of this organization. What is the aim of OPEC then? OPEC tried to manage the supply of crude oil in an export with regard to exports. What happens when the supply increases? When the supply increases, price gets stabilized. When the supply decreases, demand increases. That can lead to more prices to these countries. So OPEC countries, they act as a cartel. They unilaterally decide about the supply cuts or supply increases. They are not caring about the importing countries. That is one of the criticisms against OPEC countries. Now, what is in news is OPEC plus countries. What is that? Let us understand once. OPEC plus is a grouping which also exports crude oil along with the 14 OPEC nations. These OPEC countries include Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Brunei, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Mexico, Oman, Russia, South Sudan and Sudan. These countries, along with these 14 OPEC countries, they formed a grouping known as OPEC plus. See, now they were conducting various meetings to cut down these supplies because during lockdown last year, oil imports reduced substantially. That has led to very, very lower prices. In that case, if they cut down the supply, that leads to more demand, more prices for them. So that's the decision that they have taken. But for that, they were discussing. That is why OPEC plus countries was news. Saudi Arabia and Russia, these are 2 dominant countries in OPEC plus. Both have at the heart of 3-year alliance. This is a 3-year alliance. 11 OPEC members which now includes 11 OPEC members and 10 non-OPEC members. They all came together and formed OPEC Plus grouping. Next issue is Morocco and Sudan, two African Arab countries. They tried to make peace deal with Israel. That's why this was a news. Sudan and Morocco, both are African countries. They tried to normalize their relationship with Israel. Israel, first country that made normalization of relationship with Israel is Turkey. Then came Egypt, then Jordan. Now last year UAE and Bahrain, they also made an accord known as Abraham Accord. Abraham Accord signed between Israel, UAE and Bahrain to make a peace deal. Now Sudan and Morocco both joined this particular grouping. They both normalized their relationship with Israel. Why they oppose Israel? Israel is seen as the encroacher of Palestinian land. These countries, Muslim majority countries, Muslim dominant countries, they subscribe the pan-Islamism. That is why they oppose Israel's stand. That is why many of the countries did not recognize still. Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Saudi, these countries, they have not normalized their relationship with Israel. Last year, Bahrain, UAE, they both made diplomatic ties with Israel. And almost this one, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Bahrain, UAE, Sudan, Morocco. These are the countries that have normalized the ties with Israel. And Morocco is the latest country to make a deal with Israel. Next issue is CAATSA Act and sanctions on Turkey. USA has recently imposed sanctions on Turkey under CAATSA Act. What is this CAATSA Act? Why it has imposed sanctions on Turkey? Turkey has purchased S-400 ballistic missile defense system from Russia. S-400 Triumph is considered one of the advanced air defense missile system. Many countries have made deals with Russia for this. India, China, Indonesia, Turkey, Vietnam, even some of the European countries have also made deals with Russia for procuring S-400 missile system. But USA has an act known as Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, CAATSA Act. Under that, Section 231 says that if anyone purchases Russian arms, the USA is going to impose sanctions on them, because with regard to Ukraine issue, Russia is declared as adversary of USA. In this context, a friend of adversary is also an adversary. In that logic, a CAATSA Act was passed by USA, and under CAATSA Act, any country which made deals with Russia will also get these sanctions. In this context, it has imposed sanctions on Turkey. India is also procuring S-400 systems, but it is very unlikely that this act will be applied on India, because considering the strategic necessities of both the countries. Next issue is Brexit deal. Brexit means Britain exiting European Union. Earlier, 28 member countries were there. Now 27 countries are there. So, Brexit, European Union is economic union. They follow coherent economic policies. They all together follow the economic policies. And they also have parliament which passes various laws. They also have judiciary, executive also. In this context, UK sees that this being a member of European Union is a limitation on its national priorities. That's why it has passed a referendum. It has passed a referendum and invoked Article 50 of Lisbon Treaty, important. Article 50 of Lisbon Treaty to leave European Union. And this referendum was passed. This treaty, according to Lisbon Treaty, Article 50, 2 years' time will be provided within which the country can move out. This UK consists of Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales. These countries, they form UK. Now, agreement on Brexit deal was announced in 2020. That's why it was news. What is this agreement? The referendum was passed. UK's parliament has approved that particular thing. Now, why do they need to make a deal? Earlier, they had stronger cooperation and coordination with regard to goods, services, investment, people to people movement. Like that, in almost all the aspects of economy, they had deeper ties. Now, how to maintain that ties? Not they should not be integrated, but they should also not to be isolated. How should they make such priorities? For that, we call the deal as post-Brexit deal. That deal has been proposed and finalized and passed in 2021. It was passed in 2020. That's why it was in news. Brexit deal. Next issue is Coastal Radar Network, CRN. Coastal Radar Network agreement is already made with Maldives, Myanmar and Bangladesh. Now we are signing it with Sri Lanka, Seychelles and Mauritius. What is this Coastal Radar Network? Constellation of radars are placed so that we can observe the movement of incoming and outgoing vessels. We can also curtail the maritime related crimes. We can also encourage the cooperation of information sharing among the various countries. For that, Coastal Radar Network was created by India, and this is in line with our Sagar policy, security and growth for all in the region. This is known as Sagar policy. All the Indian Ocean countries are asked to be part of this. Already India has deals with these three countries, and we are trying with Sri Lanka, Seychelles and Mauritius. Primary aim of this surveillance, radar surveillance, is to track the fishing vessels, etc. And it is for the coastal surveillance. But radars can also be directly used for VTS, vehicle traffic management service and applications, and it helps in monitoring the illegal activities. Entire data received in this way, this will be fed to the IFC, Information Fusion Center of Indian Ocean Association. IFC, Information Fusion Center, means information will be taken, fused and early warning will be given. Under Phase 1, 46 coastal radar stations are set up. Under Phase 2, 38 static radar stations would be set up. This is Coastal Radar Network. In the Indian Ocean region, this helps the various countries which transports through this particular maritime area. Next issue is Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. What is this Supply Chain Resilience Initiative? Last year, due to COVID, almost all the countries got impacted, and few countries have impacted more, which have heavy dependency on China. In this context, India, Japan and Australia together, they have launched this initiative so as to reduce the Chinese dominance in the entire supply chain of the Indo-Pacific region. This Supply Chain Resilience Initiative, this aims to create virtuous cycle of enhancing supply chain resilience and building the strong, sustainable, balanced growth in the region. Two policy measures under this can be: 1. Supporting and enhancing the utilization of digital technology, supporting and investing in the trade diversification. 3 countries are part of it. Gaps will be addressed and these will be shared. The ministers, SCRI ministers, are going to be met once in 4 months. These are the important decisions taken with regard to Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. Next issue is China Plus One strategy. This is also related to the earlier concept, Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. See what we said, dependence on one country has led to breakdown of economies, yes or no? In this context, why can't we invest in China and have another backup? That is called as 1+ strategy. 1+ strategy means it is a business strategy to avoid investing only in China. It is to diversify the business into other countries. What is the advantage of China? Cheap labor cost, right? And market. India has a huge potential for market as well as the cheap labor. So in that context, India, Southeast Asian countries, they have to consider this China Plus One strategy. Next issue is Ganga-Mekong cooperation. Ganga-Mekong cooperation is sub-regional cooperation and organization. It consists of 5 major Asian countries known as Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand and Vietnam. This Mekong-Ganga cooperation was launched in 2000 at Laos capital Vientiane. This Mekong-Ganga cooperation, it is to cooperate between Ganga River countries, Ganga River flowing countries and Mekong River flowing countries. This facilitates closer interaction between the people inhabiting the two major rivers in this particular region, Goa and Mekong River. Ganga and Mekong River. Ganga River, Gangotri Glacier. And this facilitates people to people contact in this particular region, Ganga and Mekong River region. Mekong River flows through all these countries, Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. So in all these countries, a part of it or a branch of it is there. In this context, India is the major country in Ganga-Mekong cooperation. Next issue is Indian Ocean Rim Association. Indian Ocean Rim Association is known as IORA. It is previously known as Indian Ocean Rim Association for Regional Cooperation. Now it is very easy. It is shortened the name IORA. It was established in the year 1997. There are 22 member countries. Last member to join this particular grouping is Maldives. IORA is a regional forum and tripartite. It has tripartite nature. That means tri means three. It brings in government, business and academicians together for the closer interaction. What are the priority areas of IORA? Promotion of tourism and culture, detection of disaster risk reduction, cooperation among the center states, management of fisheries, facilitation of business and investment, maritime security. These are some of the focus areas of IORA. Let's understand the membership of IORA. These are the member countries and why France is there. Here we have Reunion Islands. So there are few islands in the Indian Ocean region. That is why France is also part of this. But remember, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, New Zealand are not the members. Understand? Not the members of this particular grouping. So why this particular Indian Ocean Rim Association is important? Recently, we also signed agreement wherein we are going to be member of Indian Ocean Commission. Indian Ocean Commission consists of Comoros, Seychelles, Mauritius, Reunion Island and Madagascar. These islands they are asking. Now, who are the members, observer members who are to be joined in this? One is India, two is Union People of Republic. Likewise, there are many observer countries. India joined as an observer country in last year. These are the issues of part 1. Thank you very much. All the very best.